The moment Owen Blake stepped into the ring, every eye in the Academy dome turned toward him, and he felt the weight of 100 silent judgments pressing down on his shoulders. He was the only human among them. The other cadets came from worlds built for comfort. Smooth gravity, gentle seasons, oceans that never turned violent. Owen came from Earth, a planet the Academy records quietly labeled a Deathworld, a place where nature itself seemed determined to test every living thing that dared to survive it. Lyra Voss stood across from him, arms crossed, her pale blue skin catching the light of the dome above. She was a Shal, bred on a world of crushing pressure and thin air, and she had made it clear from the first day that she saw Owen as nothing more than a curiosity, a fragile guest who did not belong among true warriors. "You should not be here," she said, her voice calm but sharp enough to cut through the silence of the crowd. Owen did not answer right away. He had learned that silence often said more than words ever could. The instructor, an old and respected Thrall named Cade, stepped forward with a datapad in hand. "This is a formal challenge," he announced. "Cadet Voss has invoked her right to test the newest bloodline admitted to this academy. Cadet Blake, you may decline without consequence." A murmur passed through the crowd. Everyone expected him to decline. Everyone expected the human to step back, to admit that he did not belong in a contest of strength against a species built for a crushing, merciless world. Owen felt his heart pounding, not from fear, but from something older, something that lived deep in the bones of every person who had ever come from a place that refused to make survival easy. "I accept," he said. The crowd went silent again, but this time the silence felt different. It felt like anticipation. Lyra smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "Then let us see what a Deathworld creature is truly made of." The ring itself was simple, a circle of reinforced flooring surrounded by risers filled with cadets from a dozen different worlds. Some had come to watch a lesson unfold. Others had come hoping to see the human humbled in front of everyone. Owen stepped to his side of the circle and took a slow breath. He thought of his grandfather, a quiet man who had spent his life working the land back home, a man who once told him that strength was never about being the biggest or the fastest. It was about enduring long after everyone else expected you to fall. The signal sounded, and the match began. Lyra moved first, fast and precise, closing the distance between them with the kind of speed that came from growing up on a world where hesitation meant death. Owen barely had time to react, shifting his weight just enough to avoid the full force of her advance. She did not attack to cause harm. The rules of the Academy forbade that. This was a contest of control, of technique, of proving dominance without crossing into cruelty. Every strike had to be measured, every movement restrained enough to prove a point without breaking the boundaries the instructors had set. Even so, the pressure behind her movements was immense. Owen felt it in the air around him, a force that reminded him just how far his body was from matching hers in raw power. He gave ground, circling slowly, watching the way she shifted her weight before each advance. She was testing him, waiting to see if he would panic, if he would make a mistake born from fear. He did not. Instead, he studied her rhythm the way he used to study the tides back home, patient and observant, waiting for the exact moment when the pattern would repeat itself. The crowd grew restless. Some began to whisper that the match was already decided, that the human was simply avoiding the inevitable. Lyra heard the whispers too, and her patience began to wear thin. She came at him again, faster this time, determined to end the contest quickly and prove her point beyond any doubt. Owen saw the opening the moment it appeared. He stepped inside her reach, closer than she expected, closer than her instincts had prepared her for. In that single heartbeat, he used not strength, but leverage, redirecting her own momentum against her balance. It was not a technique she recognized, not something taught in the Academy's official curriculum. It was something older, something passed down through generations of people who had learned to survive against forces far greater than themselves. Lyra stumbled, caught off guard for the first time since the match began. The crowd gasped, and for a moment, the entire dome seemed to hold its breath. She recovered quickly, resetting her stance, her eyes narrowing with a new kind of focus. The dismissiveness was gone now, replaced by something closer to respect, though she would never have admitted it aloud. "You are stronger than you appear," she said. "I am not stronger," Owen replied. "I am simply used to not having a choice." The words seemed to catch her off guard, and for the first time, a flicker of curiosity crossed her expression. They circled each other again, the match settling into a rhythm neither of them expected. Lyra adjusted her approach, no longer relying purely on speed and power. She began to study him the way he had studied her, searching for patterns, for weaknesses, for anything that might explain why a creature from such a fragile world could still be standing. But Owen did not give her the pattern she was looking for. Instead, he adapted, shifting his stance with every exchange, refusing to settle into predictability. It was exhausting, more exhausting than anything he had experienced since arriving at the academy, but he refused to let it show. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours to everyone watching. The match had become something more than a simple test of strength. It had become a demonstration of endurance, of will, of the quiet determination that came from a species shaped by constant hardship. Finally, Lyra made her move, one last decisive strike meant to end the match and reclaim the dominance she had expected to hold from the very beginning. Owen anticipated it. He shifted at the last possible moment, using the same principle of leverage that had worked before, guiding her momentum past him rather than meeting it head-on. The move was not about overpowering her. It was about understanding that even the strongest force could be redirected if you understood its nature well enough. Lyra lost her balance completely this time, and the match ended not with a dramatic display of power, but with a simple, undeniable moment of control. The dome fell silent. Instructor Cade stepped forward, studying the outcome with a calm, measured expression. "Match concluded," he said. "Cadet Blake demonstrates control and adaptability beyond expectation." The silence stretched for a long moment before the crowd finally began to murmur again. Though the tone had shifted entirely, what had once been curiosity mixed with doubt was now something closer to genuine interest. Lyra straightened herself, brushing off the moment of imbalance with practiced composure. She looked at Owen, and for the first time since he had arrived at the academy, there was no dismissiveness in her gaze. "I underestimated you," she admitted. "Most people do," Owen said, at first. She studied him for a long moment, as if trying to understand something that did not fit neatly into what she had been taught about Deathworld species. "Your planet made you this way?" "My planet gave me no other choice," Owen replied. "Where I come from, the ground can shift beneath your feet without warning. The weather can turn against you in an instant. Every living thing competes for the same limited space. You either learn to adapt, or you do not survive long enough to matter." Lyra nodded slowly, as if filing the information away for later reflection. "And yet you came here, to a place built for comfort, surrounded by species who have never known that kind of struggle." "I came here because I wanted to prove that where you come from does not decide who you become," Owen said. "It only decides what you had to overcome to get here." The crowd began to disperse slowly, the tension of the match fading into quiet conversation among the cadets. Some approached Owen with genuine curiosity, asking questions about his homeworld, about the training methods that had shaped him, about the philosophy that had guided him through the contest. Others simply watched from a distance, recalculating their assumptions about the fragile, soft-skinned species they had once dismissed without a second thought. Instructor Cade approached Owen as the dome began to empty, his expression unreadable but his eyes carrying a hint of quiet approval. "You surprised many people today," he said. "I only did what I was trained to do," Owen replied. "No," Cade said. "You did what your planet trained you to do, long before you ever set foot in this academy. That is not something we can teach here. That is something you carry with you." Owen considered the words carefully, understanding for the first time just how much of his upbringing had shaped the person standing in that ring. It was not about being the strongest, the fastest, or the most skilled. It was about resilience, about the quiet refusal to give up even when every advantage seemed to belong to someone else. As the days passed, word of the match spread throughout the academy, carried from cadet to cadet, from instructor to instructor. Owen found himself no longer viewed as a curiosity or a guest, tolerated out of formality. He had become something else entirely, a reminder that strength did not always come from the environment that made survival easy. Sometimes it came from the one that made survival nearly impossible. Lyra approached him again several days later, her demeanor entirely different from the confident dismissiveness of their first encounter. "I would like to understand more about your training methods," she said, "if you are willing to share them." Owen smiled, recognizing the shift in her tone, the quiet respect that had replaced her earlier certainty. "I would be glad to," he said. "But I should warn you, where I come from, there are no shortcuts, only patience, and the willingness to keep standing after everyone expects you to fall." Lyra nodded, a small, genuine smile forming at the corner of her mouth. "Then perhaps that is exactly what I need to learn." As the two of them walked together through the corridors of the academy, the other cadets watched with a newfound curiosity, no longer certain of the assumptions they had once held so firmly. Owen Blake had not come to the academy to prove that Earth was the strongest world in the galaxy. He had come to prove that strength could be found in places no one expected, shaped by struggles no one else had faced, carried quietly by those who refused to let their origin define their limits. And in that single, defining moment inside the ring, the entire academy had learned a lesson none of them would soon forget.